Hey, sorry about that. You haven't been waiting long, have you?
No, not too long.
Okay. I just realized yeah, didn't even notice there was a little pop-up block on my thingy.
That's like every day when I use Teams. Like some of our team uses Teams, and I have no idea how to use it, and I'm always leaving people in the waiting room.
Oh.
Uh,
Yeah. I feel like I should have learned in COVID, but I must just be a slow learner.
it's all good. Thanks for taking some time to connect.
Yeah, well, I mean, thank you for taking me up on the offer.
Um, Tell me, I mean, I definitely want to deal with the issues at hand, but I'd love to get to know you a little bit better first, so that I know who I'm talking to, and I can tell you a little about myself as well. I've read some of your articles, so I know some, like you're combat veteran, and then worked a lot on um, the peace movement for veterans, which I am somewhat aware of from being in the DC area. But I'm just curious, kind of like, it's been a decade since you've written with Sojourners, where that journey's taking you.
Where did the journey take me?
Yeah,
Um, uh, I, well, I guess the most efficient way to answer that is, yeah, I got out of the military, and a lot of progressives really liked the fact that I said I wouldn't deploy with a weapon, but I
right.
didn't ask for discharge, which made a lot of conservatives like it. And that's been something that I'm pretty proud of.
Yeah,
I was actually thinking about this the other day. Yeah, when I read the 9/11 Commission Report and the Complete Idiot's Guide to the Life of Christ on my
okay,
deployment in '04. The thing I wanted most, or that it left with me, was that I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I don't want to waste my time trying to lie to myself about who or what I was or why. And I was, these are all scratched up. I was an artilleryman, not like service. So it was like, I need to figure this out. And I had been in 5 years. And I read Yoder and Tolstoy and most of the rest. I studied with Stanley Hauerwas. Um, but it never, I know, as I began to find satisfaction in some questions I had been asking, other questions that came up were off limits to progressives.
sure.
They're off limits in general. Um, and so very early on, I found Martin of Tours, right there
Yep, yeah, yep.
and right there. And in 19, I took vows as a Hospitaller of St. Martin, which was really nice. And I'm working on our annual gathering.
Cool.
And Martin, the progressives want to believe in his biography, written by an aristocrat who was embarrassed by military service, as a lot of progressives are. He kind of like flubbed the numbers to make it look like Martin was only in a few years,
Sure.
but he didn't quite hide the facts enough. Um, And for Martin to have only been in a couple of years when he goes to battle and he tells Caesar Julian, I'm a Christian soldier, I'm not allowed to fight. That was at the Battle of Worms, which is now Strasbourg, which was in 356. And so if he enlisted, or if he was born in 316, he didn't get out until he was 40 years old.
Yeah,
He did a full 25-year term. And as a Praetorian Guardsman, it is it is plausible for him to have never seen frontline premeditated violent combat. It's plausible.
yeah,
And so that story might be that he protected a man's life for 20 some odd years before that man or that position took him to combat and he's like, wait, this is different. And in English speaking countries, that's what Martin is known for, is splitting his cape.
yeah.
It's where we get chapel, chaplain, a cappella, all these things.
Right.
But in European nations, he's known for his bishopric. He gets out of the military and he goes to find the heavy hitter of his day, Hilary of Poitiers. And Hilary was this rabid anti-imperialist. And Hillary wanted to ordain him, and Martin's like, no, I've shed blood. I'm not gonna be a priest. So he's made a deacon, or he's it's an exorcist, but it's a deacon. Uh,
Sure.
and as this itinerant deacon, he goes around forming communities, smashing idols and shit. And uh, he's so popular among the rural, uncivilized pagans. And pagans are just it's uncivilized. It's not a religious term. There's no
Yeah.
such thing in Rome as like a pagan religion. It's like there's the Roman religion and then there's pagan religion. And so these country bumpkins really take a liking to him and he gets really popular. And so the people of Tours, this huge city, want him as their bishop. I don't know why. I don't know. But they know he doesn't like big cities. And he had been known to embarrass Caesar in his own house. Another Caesar that he later, the Empress Maximian's wife, he catechized an empress.
Yeah.
And so he kept his ties with the political class. And maybe that's why Tours wanted him.
Sure.
So they didn't want him escaping. And at the time, to make someone bishop, you just all had to like publicly acclaim someone bishop.
Right.
And so they conspire, they hatch this plan, and they have one of their allies in the country say, oh, my wife or my mother, she's sick. We need you to go into the city to cure her. And Martin's like, okay, okay. And along the road from, I think it's Cannes or Amboise, they had placed people in the event of him turning back, they were going to like drag him into the city center.
Okay.
Because ordination was very different back in the day. Like Pachomius, who started the Cenobitic monasticism or restarted it, he caught word that Athanasius, no, Ambrose of Milan, was coming to his area, and he like hid. He had his monks hide him because all he had to do to be made a bishop was to be placed hands upon. Anyway, so Martin is going in, and uh, they they're getting ready to acclaim him bishop, and the other bishops are there, and they're required. They're the ones that have to lay hands on him. And the
Mhm.
other bishops are like not too happy about this. They're like, he doesn't smell, he smells funny, he doesn't dress right. But they succeed in making him bishop. And instead of living in the cathedral, he insists on living across the River Loire in a bunch of caves. He's the
Okay.
first, certainly the first Western bishop to adopt and maintain a monastic lifestyle. He had 80 disciples by the time he died. And before he died, he got involved in the Priscillian affair, the first heretic that was murdered by the church in order to enforce orthodoxy. And because of his connections, he pled to the Emperor Maximian, like, don't do this. This is not your fight. This is a church misunderstanding and blah, blah, blah. And Maximian owed him something, and he tried to like appease Martin, but ultimately these Spanish bishops prevailed in having Priscillian murdered.
Mhm.
And this was in the 370s, 380s. And he dies in 391 or 397, I can't remember. But
Okay.
he dies thinking he's a failure. And if you go through Europe, Martin's stuff is all over the place. Germany, France, Italy. But here, all we think of him as a conscientious objector.
Sure.
So I mention him because he's kind of in this in-between place. He doesn't belong to the Catholic Church. There was no Catholic Church before the schism.
Right.
Um, and he recognized that there's a certain amount of moral consideration and combat and military service. And that level of distinction I haven't found in our church of our day.
Yeah.
Um, and Sojourners, I noticed, published almost anything I gave them until Kathleen Falsani. And the last thing I did write was the silent betrayal of our veterans
Okay.
on Martin's feast day, April 4th,
Yeah.
Martin Luther King's feast day. And that's because I noticed stuff when I started looking and I started trusting my own experience and my own training and um, not adopting the expectations of progressives or conservatives, but
Yeah.
progressives that was, I had to self-flagellate and talk about myself in order to be put in front of the parade to borrow my credibility, but never actually invest in who I was and who I was becoming. As I matured theologically, Shane, I noticed it first with Shane. Well, no, it was kind of a whole mix of stuff. Um, People and institutions with perceived power kept me at arm's distance. I can prove that to you with the emails with Sojourners, but I'll just believe you believe me. And that's a little undignified.
Hmm.
Um, Shane, it was easier to see. I was at his wedding. We went to Iraq together. Like I've met his mom on several occasions, and I only found out after the fact that he was forming Red Letter Christians and he didn't want me on the leadership team. And that is absolutely his right, but that communicates something.
Sure.
Even when I was at Sojourners Christian Peace Witness for Iraq in March of 2007, I was invited to read another veteran's words simply because he wasn't available. Joshua Castile, who died of cancer in 2022, shortly after my first book came out. And Sojourners organized it. I spoke in the National Cathedral before I think 3,000 people, but it wasn't my words I spoke.
Sure.
It was someone else's.
Yeah.
It was a veteran that progressives could swallow a little bit more easily. So, when it became clear to me that people were putting up walls, that's fine. It happened that it just happened at Duke as well. Stanley Hauerwas threatened me and engaged in a quid pro quo. It only didn't go viral because it had nothing to do with genitalia, because we're still all just Manichaeans. We only really give a shit if if our bodies and a perception of bodies are involved.
Right.
Stanley had power. He used that power to shut me down, and everybody was fine with it. In fact, they accused me of trying to destroy Stanley.
Yeah.
Um, and so I found my own path, and that path is leading me in directions that I don't see progressives willing to go. But I'm convinced that that is where God is, was, and shall be. And I think this is a time more than any where our political ideologies need to crank the volume down. Unfortunately, we're kind of cranking them up. And I, when did I began asking? Sojourners is not the only organization I've asked to take my work down, and I've
Okay.
done so because my community, military community, credibility can be the difference between life and death. I don't mean suicides. I mean
Sure. Yeah, I understand.
your platoon is all you have.
Yeah.
And at a suicide rate that hasn't gone down since I started writing for Sojourners or anybody else, we're doing something wrong.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
if everybody else has the privilege of being divorced from that fact, fine. But I'm trying something different. And I cannot be associated with Sojourners if it's more important to Sojourners to be progressive than to be faithful. Um, I asked Sojourners years ago for Jim Wallace to speak up and say some stuff. And then when he said something opposite, that's when Falsani said, "Oh, I'm just an angry veteran." And I stopped writing. Adam Taylor has been CC'd on this stuff because I spoke with him when I was getting ready to write my first or second book. But I can't shake the feeling I'm just not a part of the cool kid group. And if that's the case, that's fine. I'll go find my own group. But I need A, to not compete with my own writing on other sites, and B, I can't be associated with organizations that are clearly for whom their priorities reflect more fidelity to a progressive construct than I'll say little p progressive values. My friends are dying. I don't have time for whatever it is that other organizations and people are doing. Do it. I fought for 6 years for your right to do it. But that means I know my rights. I want my work down if it hasn't been paid for. The good news is I found that the wrestling with demons and the right to refuse to bear arms, those were both paid for. The only one that remains unpaid for is the state and the union, which I don't think I was ever informed with in the magazine. So that's good news. I do still stand by at least my current interpretation that wrestling with demons was changed so significantly that it doesn't reflect my work, and it was essentially rejected. And I raised that issue. I raised two issues. One was the use of my face without any notification in the magazine, which affects my audience. And a second was the fact that instead of me doing work, journalistic type work, it was made just into another autobiographical diatribe. And my community doesn't take too kindly to talking about yourself all the time. I didn't have that kind of language then, but
Sure.
that's the case. Um, my work was rejected in order to just make it another sob story for vets or a sob story by a veteran for civilian saviors. And I'm not the only vet that has expressed that. Um, but I mean, it's out there now. So that's where I'm coming from.
It's good language. Give me one. I just want to write that phrase you just said down because it's really good. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to attempt to justify conversations that you had with people that are long before I worked for
Sure.
Sojourners. So I can't speak into what their motivation is or was, and I am just disappointed that you have had the experience that you've had, or that it's led to these feelings. Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know all the pieces of conversation that you had with Rose and Christine and whoever else who might have been with the staff prior. Excuse me. And I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to take the blame for things that they've said or try to justify something that they said without being a part of that conversation. Um, I'm trying to think of the right word. I don't believe that Sojourners is um, exclusively taking this, we're going to align with progressives mentality that you stated. I understand how, especially in the area of your content, where that can be um, more of a concern because it hasn't been the premier topic that we've been, engaging in, especially in the last year and a half. Um, I don't think that that means that it's not important to people, to us, or to people on our team. And a little bit of my story, I've helped start a few different churches in the DC metro area, two of which are one's in Annapolis, and there's an enormous military population that attends, and then another's in Fredericksburg, where right outside of Quantico. So we had a lot of military. So I've been to enough funerals to know that the problem that you're talking about is real. Um, I don't think that, us not writing about it necessarily says we don't care about it. But at the same time, I understand your perspective on that as well. Um, yeah, I, my goal with Sojourners, with every organization I've ever worked for and every organization that I'm in, like, I'd much rather figure out how to build bridges and burn bridges. Um, and that's why, I wanted to hear a little of your story, and I appreciate it. I honestly know a little bit about St. Martin, but not a ton. And I took a whole bunch of notes so that I can go try to learn more. Sorry, did I break up there for a second?
Oh, yeah, I
Um,
can say I got ADHD, so I kind of hyperfixate. I'm not frozen.
no, 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 no. I was frozen. I have ADHD as well, so very well, very relatable. Um, on the legal side of things, like, I can go back and talk to the editorial team and see about things. Our understanding from our legal team is that the articles that are up we do have rights because those rights were assigned to us by providing them to us, and that's like the copyright law doesn't allow for revocation of that in our from our team's understanding. That said, like if there's a solution where we don't have to lean into the legal side of things, then that's, you know, I'd rather like build a bridge than burn a bridge. But at the end of the day, if the only solution is taking things down, then I have to like we're gonna have to think through whether we have to think through that because it is not part of the editorial policy, and from our legal team, it's not. It doesn't feel like they don't feel like that's something that we actually are obligated to do.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
I think the metaphor is not accurate. You can't
sure.
burn a drawbridge. Sojourners has more power than me.
Yeah,
Y'all retracted. When I offered stuff, it got ignored, it got declined. Um, Rose was sending me stuff about distraught veterans, me and Evan Knappenberger. Like, I don't care what you believe. I care
yeah,
what the story says from the facts that I have at my disposal.
sure. Yeah, I get that.
Rose didn't respond to any of those emails. Um, yeah, so like all I have is the facts. And you might be right. I don't know for sure. But what you've given me, it does not reserve into perpetuity. I'm a member of the Authors Guild. I can ask them.
Yeah,
But the story that this tells is a powerful organization that doesn't align with the values of a frontline laborer, an author, and insists on keeping them up. And I don't know why, other than to use me as token credibility.
yeah. I mean, the sites that have your pages on them aren't getting so much traffic where I think that that's the concern. It's more from a like we have editorial policies that are to maintain our credibility. It looks suspicious if we take things down, and then because then that says to our audience that we don't we publish things that we don't necessarily that or fully believe in. So we can additional things that change. We can change your bio and make things unsearchable, but actually removing it from the website is a journalistic credibility with different organizations and when and frankly is outlets.
You're breaking up just a little bit. I'm catching most of it, but I'm closing windows
I
to make sure my
apologize.
computer isn't like,
Yeah, let me make
I don't
sure
know.
I'm on the right a good network.
Um, yeah, no, that's
I it,
I understand. But
it
again, the story
yeah the other
we get to write our own story. So if the concern
yeah
on some level is that
100%.
you lose credibility by removing articles, that assumes that you haven't told your audience why those articles are there or not there. I don't subscribe. I've got a business certificate from Georgetown with this veterans thing. Um, and at the end of the day, like, whose credibility are you after? Um, that's
Sure.
a philosophical question. Um, the
Yeah, no.
uh, I was gonna say, oh, I did have a thought. Those articles
Yeah.
staying up without any kind of response or evolution or something suggests that the only, and this, not just for sojourners, but the only way uh, that I can only get certain articles accepted says as much about the publishers as it does about me. For example, I wrote two articles for America Magazine. One was a long time ago. The other one was
Mhm.
uh, essentially a criticism of J.D. Vance for using stolen valor to browbeat Tim Walz. A week after I
Yeah.
published that, I discovered that Harris's campaign had someone on there, no, in the vice presidential office was a guy that had been working on civil rights for soldiers and veterans with me. And I discovered that Harris did not implement a civil rights law for military families when she was AG in California in 2013. And magically, America said, oh, that's not an opinion piece. We have to fact check it. They didn't have to fact check anything when I was digging at Trump. And that sure seems like an illegal campaign violation. I told them, take that article down or publish the facts as I presented them to you, because that is engaging in an absolute prohibition on political activity. Because not long after the
Sure.
election, that same editor called Trump unfit to lead. And that is a bias. And because they gave me $250 to browbeat JD Vance and essentially withheld $250 for the exact opposite, that's a $500 campaign finance contribution from a nonprofit, which is illegal. So I filed an IRS complaint, and that's all I can do. I will file a lawsuit if I
Sure.
have to maintain my credibility. That will happen. I haven't said one potential is to guarantee me a fill in the blank number of words where I can say some kind of update addressed to progressives or whatever you think audiences are that updates my theology and sets the context for what I learned writing for Sojourners, why I haven't written or not. I don't care. I mean, my problem is that my history with Sojourners suggests I was not just self-censoring, I was being censored. And that, in retrospect, is not appropriate and not fair. That goes from wrestling with demons. That goes from some of the decisions that were made about the newsworthiness of After the Yellow Ribbon in 2011. I had a series of emails with, God, Claire Lawrenson, Les Denlinger Reeves, Rose, Dwayne Shank, talking about this conference that I set up at Duke that Sojourners conveniently didn't cover after I had written this stuff about Martin Luther King. So we write our own stories. Whether or not
No, and
Sojourner,
I would say, I mean, that's that's not unique to you. I mean, that there are dozens and dozens of writers that work for us. We can't accept all of them, and we do have issue sets that are priorities for us at different times of the organization, and that changes over time based on what's happening in the world. That's not a. I think you're making something personal that's not personal.
we withdrew from Iraq in 2011, the same year I held that conference. Why
Okay.
wasn't it newsworthy?
I didn't say it wasn't newsworthy, but it might not have been in the priority set for what we were doing. We're not CNN. We have a very limited staff, so we
Right.
have to focus in particular spaces.
I was privileged as a writer until I started straying from a perceived party line. So, yeah, you're right, but you're also not wrong. You're also not right. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, I get you.
You're making, and when I say you, I mean Sojourners.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sojourners made decisions about what to cover and what not to cover while speaking like uh, Jim Wallace, to bring up the kind of breakdown. He
yeah.
went on CNN and said all of these priorities that Christians should agree to with Richard Land.
Right.
Word war never fucking came out of his mouth. You know how many veterans died in 2011?
No,
I mean, it's kind of fucked up. I can
yeah,
get into an emotional state now, recounting to you how fucked up it is to say that war was not newsworthy in 2011. That was the same year that Duke had all of its students for the last day of classes dress up in shirts that said, "The end is near," with a bomb on it. 6 months after we withdrew from Iraq. So that's bias. That's civilian bias.
yeah. I mean, I don't. I I disagree. Um, I think there are lots of news organizations that weren't covering war all the time.
And I think
Uh,
that's self-evidently fucked up.
I
That you can disagree is a luxury I don't share. I mean, it is impossible unless I pathologize my experience and say it's all in the past and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's unhealthy.
I understand that, but that's true with lots of issues. People that are dealing with discrimination because of their immigration status have the same situation. They
Why
can't
is it
get
a zero
that.
sum game?
There's a limited amount of resources that any organization has.
You weren't paying me for blogging.
We also can't like discontinue our blog.
I'm if something I'm saying is not true, feel free to correct me.
I
But that
I'm
is not a contradiction of what I just said. The
it's a
resources,
contextual
the
it is a
benefit that
contextual.
Sojourners got severely outweighed the benefit that I got and my community received.
Okay. I mean, uh, I think that that's subjective, but I understand what you're saying. Um, I I can't, I don't know the soldier experience. I've not experienced that. Many of my friends have been in that space, but I personally have not experienced that. So I can't say that. But I do know that other people are dealing with other issues that they can't ignore that are not being covered in every news cycle.
Yeah,
And
but veteran stuff is across the board not covered. So your friends like that doesn't regard me. Sojourners has power. It has used that power just like anybody would,
yeah,
and the way they use their power reflects their own bias. Sojourners is biased. If
yeah,
you want to remain biased, that's fine, but leave me out of it.
all media is biased.
Mhm. But
And
we're supposed to be Christian, and we're supposed to turn our hearts toward the least of these. How many, I don't know, African Americans are killing themselves every day? How many women are killing themselves every day? Like, no matter how you cut it, if it's not a zero-sum game, the reason that any organization has to say, we don't have time for vets, we're going to benefit from their sacrifice while they just go ahead and kill themselves slowly. Like, I don't know how else to cut it, man. Like, we live in a world of not just like what gets me about progressives is that we're worried about like some emperor, anti-imperialism. We live in a world where now, or we live in a country where now everybody is their own emperor. Me, mine, 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 mine. I spent 6 years making sure you had those rights. And now you, as a civilian, and Sojourners as a civilian organization, benefits off the fruit of my labor. You know what it's called when you take the fruit of someone else's labor while watching them starve? It's slavery. And I cannot be associated with that. I will not be associated with it. I don't care what your policy is. I care that you take it down or we find some other creative solution to address the fact that my battle buddies are dying and have been, and increasingly so since I was writing for Sojourners, and nothing has changed. And instead of empowering the military community and the individuals that you were leaning on to help you look like you were credible, I got jettisoned. And now you have what's her name? Diane Westrick. I know that someday she's going to have to grow up and she might feel bad and she might get jettisoned. It's cyclical. So you're absolutely right. There's a lot of people with a lot of needs. So why was I treated so differently? Why is it my military service that makes
yeah,
it so easy to say it's not newsworthy, it's not important, it's not you? I'm going to sit here and receive the benefits of our democracy while the people who sacrificed for it silence themselves.
right. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And I don't think that there are other issues that we are also not covering that also warrant coverage. Um, that's the reality of in or any periodical or any journalistic organization with limited resources. Yes, has this one been one that's not covered? You're probably right. I haven't gone through all of our archives to see what we've written about. But that's equally true of many, many other issues.
I'm not many other issues. I'm me. And I represent a community that you are disproportionately silencing.
Yeah. All right. And yeah, I appreciate that. I will take your thoughts and recommendations back to our editorial team, and we'll be back in touch with what we think our next steps should
Okay. Uh, I want to be sure I'm as explicit as possible. I'm offering to write for you for free with the proviso that you not reject it. that we can have some kind of debate and back and forth with the editorial, but you're not going to reject it just because you got too much shit to go to do and like too many cool kid things to do. If
Yeah,
you're serious about supporting soldiers, I'm a soldier. And I don't know, you guys haven't said that. Maybe you are overtly anti-military. I don't know. But I
sure.
am
Yeah.
offering to write a piece so long as I know that I am allowed to actually speak from my voice, not from through the editorial rose-colored lenses that I have been in the past.
No, I understand the offer that you're making, and that is what I will communicate back to our team. And yeah, be in touch. Is
What's a reasonable amount of time I should wait?
um Today Wednesday. I
Yep.
mean, I would say definitely by lunch on Friday, but probably before that.
Okay. Sounds good.
Yep. I I, I do appreciate your time and
Yeah,
thank you for sharing.
sure. Whoopsie. Okay. All right. I'll talk to you later, or I'll wait to hear from you.